Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Simon Fell.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ferris, I've just got a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind. Picking up from Stuart McDonald's last question to you, I'm interested in your view on what drove the change in police action during the vigil. We've heard plenty of accounts, we've had lots of evidence as to a relatively friendly relationship between the police and those who were attending earlier in the day. So what do you think drove that shift?
It's not entirely clear why it happened, but there was a point at which, as I mentioned before, a number of police officers came pushing and shoving through the crowd. It was about 10 or 12 officers. They came from outside the crowds. I was in the bandstand at the time, and I saw them come through the crowds and into the bandstand. And it was clear that some enforcement action was going to be taken. And indeed, that's what then happened. The police started trying to stop the people in the bandstand from speaking. Soon after, there were a number of banners that had been hung up commemorating what had happened to Sarah Everard, talking about the issues involved. The police started forcibly pulling those banners down. They were crowding the people speaking inside the bandstand, talking to them, physically crowding them, trying to stop them speaking. I think there was some like lo-fi equipment that they had, and the police took some of that, like a PA system, small PA system, and they were kind of generally trying to stop the people speaking. And it was clear that previous to that, the crowd was welcoming having people making speeches, talking about the events leading up to the gathering. People were visibly emotional, and I think that was a way of them expressing expressing how they felt and trying to understand how they felt, why they felt how they felt, and to see the police trying to physically shut that down, I think upset people and made them extremely frustrated. And that was clear in the way that the crowd reacted and were chanting, telling the police to go home and telling them to leave the organisers, sorry, not the organisers, the people speaking alone.
But in your view, thank you for that, but in your view, there wasn't anything on that bandstand or that was being said or things that were being hung that drove that. It was a police decision to act then, rather than something that had prompted them from activity on that bandstand.
I mean, I can't speak for what prompted the police themselves, but from what I saw, there were people speaking. The crowd was very receptive to that. There were banners. I mean, the people were speaking about male violence, about male police violence, given the context of the event. But it wasn't rowdy. There was no violence at all. People were socially distanced. Generally, pretty much everyone, as far as I saw, were wearing masks. And it was only when the police started piling into the bandstand and, as I say, pushed people together as they did so, which kind of stopped what social distancing was going on, which clearly made people upset and frustrated at what they saw was an attempt to shut down this form of gathering, which was paying respects in many ways to what happened.
Okay, thank you. And if you wanted to disperse the gathering in a more proportionate way, so given the COVID-19 concerns, if it was around social distancing, if it was around the sheer number of people there, what do you think would have been a more proportionate way for the police to have undertaken that, rather than what did occur on the evening?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how they may have acted differently, but all I can say is that the next day there was a gathering in Parliament Square where I was also a legal observer, and I would say there was probably a similar number of people. And the police didn't sort of pile in, they didn't try and stop people speaking. People spoke, the crowd listened, and eventually after a few hours, that crowd dissipated. And it was in stark contrast to what had happened. As far as I was aware, like the people were there for the same reasons. People were talking about the same things. It was very much about Sarah Everard. It was also about what had happened to her and male police violence and police violence generally. And after a few hours, the crowd dissipated.
Thank you. And last one from me. We've heard and seen in Anna Burley's evidence that there've been considerable efforts to engage with the local community and the police and the local representatives ahead of the event. But I'm just wondering if your organisation was planning a vigil or an event like this in a pandemic. Is there anything you would have done differently to try and head off some of these things happening?
So Black Protest Legal Support don't organise protests because we're independent from protest organisers, and I don't think it's for us to say how they should be organised, since we're independent to monitor and observe police conduct. But in the context of the many protests that legal observers from the organisation have been at, there've always been long-standing concerns about police conduct at protests, whether they're called protests, gatherings, vigils, or demonstrations. And the use of force and level of police aggression and harassment at many of those events has always concerned us. But protests often happen organically, as I think was generally the case on Saturday. They don't necessarily need organisers. People were angry and upset and wanted to express that and pay their respects. So I'm not sure how much can always be done by self-appointed organisers at these events. People wanted to pay their respects and express how they felt, and so they turned up and did that.
Thank you, Chair.